Please help me welcome J Loren Norris.
I used to have a friend in high school who had a rabbit's foot. It was a pink, furry rabbit's foot with a little brass tip on a key ring, and this guy never went anywhere without this rabbit foot. He was convinced, whether it was on the football field or driving on the highway, if he didn't have that rabbit's foot, life was going to fall apart. And I think there are people today in leadership who have some kind of something like that. It's called a talisman, and that's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. Stay tuned.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.
I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. And maybe you've never heard the word talisman. Maybe you have. According to the AI response to a Google search, what is a talisman? The answer is a talisman is an object that is believed to have magical powers or religious powers. Talismans are often worn as jewelry or carried on the body, but they can also be built into architecture. So I want you to think for a moment about the different things in your life, the persons, places, and things, the nouns, that you look to and think, well, the last time our football team won a game, I was wearing these socks, sitting in that spot on the couch, eating these kind of Doritos, and sipping on this kind of drink. And if I get all of those elements in exactly the right proportion, the right order, at the right timing, maybe our team will win again. I know that sounds silly. Some would just say, well, that's superstition. But I wonder if you were to look honestly at your life, how many different things in your life you believe your success, your relationships, your education, your financial well-being are tied to. Maybe it's a specific degree program. If I just get my RN, if I just get my PhD, if I just get my MDiv, if I just get this certification, this next whatever, then the whole world turns around for me. If I just get this new job, this one opportunity, then the whole thing is going to be better. I know when I joined the John Maxwell team in 2011, there were a lot of people who were kind of pondering it. It was a brand new thing, literally had just rolled out in 2010. I believe they started making announcements about it, and Minute with Maxwell became a big thing. And when I joined, I didn't have the funds at the time to make the trip to go to the IMC. And then I got involved in the World Championship of Public Speaking with the Toastmasters organization. And literally the first training, which was in August of 2012, or 2011, and my competition for the World Championship of Public Speaking semifinals was the same week. Only John Maxwell was in Florida and Toastmasters was in Las Vegas. And so I had to choose. And I chose between the two of them to go to the World Championship of Public Speaking because the John Maxwell training, even though that was the first one, they said we will probably do a new one each year. Well, I rushed and I signed up to be a founding member. I got my certification. I got there in February of 2012 as fast as I could. I got my final documentation to put on the wall of my little founders member coins because I wanted to be within the first 100. And they said, there may never be more than, say, 500 John Maxwell coaches. Okay, that was almost 15 years ago. And we were pushing 50,000 coaches worldwide now in the same program. But I remember on that first day of training, when a lot of us walked in the door and we kind of felt like, now that I am a John Maxwell team member, doors are just going to fly open for me. In fact, I remember coming back to town and realizing there were like 6 other people in the same church who were also John Maxwell coaches. And now all of a sudden I'm thinking, how big is this stage for John Maxwell coaches? If I've got my little coin and I've got my little certificate and I carry it around in a binder with me to prove to people I am certified and I am trained and I'm qualified and I'm competent, if I have that, how could anybody possibly turn me down? But I also remember over the next year or two being part of the mentorship program, being on those daily calls, literally sometimes twice a day. I would hear people who they had their certification, they'd gone through the same training that I had. And maybe they hadn't finished all the online courses for the coaching program or the leadership program or the public speaking training. They hadn't completed all the videos yet, but they had the same certification that I had. And they were ready to get out there and start making money. And some of the questions sounded like, well, now that I have my certification, when do I get paid? And they missed the idea that, well, you're an entrepreneur. This is not a job. This is an accommodation or an accomplishment, and not much more than that. But I can tell you that since I went through that with the John Maxwell team, and I watched a whole lot of people feel like, well, now that I have this, people should just, I'm waiting for the phone to ring. And so they started building websites, and they started producing business cards, and they started producing online trainings for sales. Then they started producing the actual handouts to say, if you're going to go speak to a group, here's the handout. You can read the script. You can memorize the whole script. Here's the questions you ask if you're doing a day-long training. And I began to realize there were a whole lot of people who had that certification, that label. They would wear the little pin on their lapel. I did for a while. And they would go out there and just pound the streets as a John Maxwell person. Look, I love John Maxwell. I've been studying John Maxwell for 35 years now. Yes, that makes me old. I get it. But I've also been studying Dale Carnegie and scripture and other leaders and watching and listening to hundreds and hundreds. I say all that to say there were a lot of people that I believe, whether it was the John Maxwell coaching program or Brian Tracy's or Jack Canfield's or Tony Robbins, or trying to think of some of the others, hundreds of them that are out there, that you can sign up and become a certified coach with them and have that little label on your lapel or on your documentation. And just having that doesn't make you lucky. It doesn't bring business pounding the door down. It doesn't give you any opportunity that you didn't have before by itself. See, here's what happens. When I have a conversation with someone and they say, what do you do? Well, I'm a leadership and communications coach. I help people improve their leadership skills and improve their communication skills. The next question they usually ask is, where did you learn to do what you do? What are they really asking? Are you competent? Are you qualified? Well, I have a list of people that are CEOs and retired military experts and military intelligence and ministry leaders and pastors and politicians that are willing to give referrals. I can give you their phone numbers if you're asking, but generally speaking, I've been studying leadership for over 35 years. I've been practicing leadership for over 35 years. I've been communicating and training communicators for about 15 years. And so, yeah, I've got a little bit of experience. Well, but where did you get your training? Dale Carnegie, John Maxwell, taught at Gateway Church for 10 years. And for most people, those three credentials help sway the decision to say, sounds to me like you know what you're talking about. If you've been trusted by this organization and this organization and this organization, that's good enough for me. I believe you can do it. And oftentimes they will have already seen a demonstration. But I can tell you that to this day, while there have been many who've said, I knew after I saw you do what you do that you were going to be good at it. When I knew that you were also studied under John Maxwell, that made quite a bit of difference for me. I haven't yet had anybody say, I called because I saw your name on the John Maxwell list of coaches. Not yet. Now, it is a great credential, but it's not the decision-making factor. Let me move that to another parallel in your life. It might be that you have worked really hard to accomplish something. You've trained, you've practiced, you've readied yourself. And when an opportunity comes knocking at the door, you leap through that door and you pursue it. Did the rabbit's foot make that happen? No, probably not. Did the books you have on your shelf make that happen? No, probably not. The certificate on the wall, did that make that happen? No, it didn't. Were all of those things part of your mental preparation, your emotional readiness, your competence? Probably so. And the books, the earning of the certificate, the process that you went through as a human to grow yourself. Those are the things that made the real difference. Those are the preparation behind the who that you are. Those are the things that add the value to make you capable and competent and qualified to do what you do. But it wasn't that plaque on the wall that said the university you went to that people went, oh, I see you went to Duke, or I see you went to UNT, and I'm hiring you. What do you do? It doesn't work like that. Now, there are some organizations where if you're a member of that organization, being a member of that organization commits you to doing business with people in that organization first. BNI is a good example of a networking organization that if you are a member of a local chapter of a BNI business and you need a plumber, if there's a plumber in your local group, you're committed to at least giving them a try. Now that's part of your membership of BNI, is that you're expected. I don't know that required is a valid word, but it is highly expected and highly frowned upon if you don't. At least give that person a try. At least give them a shot at the bid or the quote. You don't have to do business with them, obviously. That would be illegal. But you have to at least give them a try. Let them quote on it. Let them take a look at the project. Look at their referrals from the past, the other things they've done. And so in that way, BNI may be the thing that gets you business that you wouldn't have gotten any other way. Being a member of that organization may bring opportunity your way that your marketing couldn't do, that your advertising couldn't do, that your personal referrals from the accomplishments you've had, the jobs that you've done, couldn't do. But because you're a member of this BNI group, now there's a synergistic responsibility to do business with each other. That may give you an advantage. That may give you a leg up, but it's still not a lucky rabbit's foot making things happen in the universe outside of you. You still have to do the work, join the BNI, show up at the meetings. That's just the way it works. But I still want you to stop for a minute and think, how many of those things in your life, whether it's an accomplishment, it's a badge, it's a ribbon, it's a trophy on the shelf, it's a plaque, a certificate, a degree program, how many of those things have you looked at in your life and said, I'm going to pursue those things at all costs? I'm going to invest in them. I'm going to pour myself into them. I'm going to accomplish them so that I can put them on the wall and think, look what I've done. Now, I've seen, I can't think of the name of it. If you know the name of this thing, I want you to type it in the comments below. But it's a mimic of a little scroll. It's usually brass or pewter, and it's designed to be nailed to the doorpost at a house of a Jewish family. Some people wear them on a necklace. Some people keep them in their cars. But this little thing, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a representative of, when you walk in the doorpost, it's kind of a if you know, you know. When you walk in and you see that thing on your doorpost, you're like, oh, Jewish family. Or at least a family that follows the Old Testament Levitical law of a Jewish family. And so you might see that and think, oh, interesting. You might look at that and go, I know everything I need to know about them, good or bad, because I see that thing on the door. I've been in homes where when you come in the door immediately, there's a giant rug right in the door, and no one walks on that rug, everyone walks around it. And all the shoes are on the right as you come in the door. And when you come to that rug, you come barefooted and you lay on your face and you make acknowledgments, prayers. I've been in those homes many times. And that rug is like that little thing on the door. It's part of the architecture. It's part of the place. It's part of the setting, the environment. I've been in places where the bowl of water sits at the front and behind it a cross, a crucifix, and beside it wafers, and on the other side wine. And this setup, this scenario, it has deep religious meaning to those who participate, and it falls in that category of if you know, you know. And if you don't know, it may seem silly. But there are practices and habits that we get into at all aspects of our life. Some in marriage relationships, there are certain ways of doing things. There are habits that you have that are intentional, and there are habits you have just because, well, it's convenient for you and your spouse. And so you do those things because, well, you've always done those things. Let me give you a strange example. You've heard this before. You've heard this story probably 1,000 times, but it's an old story of a lady who's cooking her pot roast, and she cuts both ends off and throws it in the pan and sticks it in the oven. And her husband looks at her and he's like, "Why do you cut the ends off your pot roast every single time?" And she said, "Well, that's the way I was taught to do it." Well, Thanksgiving comes around and there's mother-in-law, grandma, and she's cutting the ends off the roast and throwing it in the oven. And he looks at her and he's like, "Why do you do that?" And she said, "Well, that's the way I was taught to do it." Well, Christmas rolls around and here's another pot roast. Only this time it's grandma. It's not his wife. It's not his mother-in-law. It's her mother. And she's got the roast and she's doing all the prep, and he watches, and sure enough, she puts that pot roast together, puts all the potatoes and carrots in it, throws it in the pan, throws it in the oven. He goes, wait. You didn't cut the ends off." She said, "Why would I do that?" He's like, "Well, my wife and her mother both said they learned from you to cook the roast by cutting the ends off." She goes, "Oh my gosh, that's the silliest thing ever. I always had to cut the ends off because our oven was too small for the next size roasting pan, and if I didn't cut the ends off, it would burn to the pan. You don't have to do that anymore. Ovens are much bigger now than they were back then." And so what was one person's tradition of necessity, it was a practice or a habit that overcame or accommodated a problem that she faced, became somebody else's, for lack of a better term, religious habit. It became the thing that they focused on in the process, as if it made a difference in the outcome. Yeah, I'm pausing for a minute to cause you to ask the question, what are the things in your life that you do because you saw somebody else do it and you thought that thing they're doing, that's what makes them successful. That's what makes them so good at what they do. I'm going to mimic that thing because that thing is what's giving them good luck, good opportunity, good progress. I'm going to tell you right now, that thing might be a talisman. It might be the sign or the symbol of some magic or religious success that has absolutely nothing to do with all the hard work that was put in behind the scenes. When people come to me and they say, "Help me write the speech that sells," I believe there are some of the people who come to me and ask that question who see a great speech as a talisman. This is the one that's going to make me money. This is the one that's going to change the world. If I just have this speech memorized, that I can quote it word for word and I can add the drama and put the feeling in it, then wow, gazinga, I'm going to be wealthy. But when you notice someone like John Maxwell or Andy Andrews or Dale Carnegie of old or Brian Tracy or Jim Rohn, those guys had their key phrases and their processes and their methods. And if you read enough of John Maxwell's books, you'll see that he addresses some of the same things again and again and again and again and again and again. But from a little different angle this time, and a little different angle this time, and a little different angle this time. And those different angles sometimes are about the maturity of his own life. Or if you ask John Maxwell right now, after having published close to 90 books and sold probably in the neighborhood of 40 million copies of his leadership books, he'll tell you himself. You just go Google his name look him up on YouTube, watch any video on YouTube. And when you watch videos of John Maxwell talk about the books that he's written over all the decades that he's taught leadership, what he'll tell you is, early on, I had no idea what I was talking about. It was great philosophy, it was great theory, it was a great idea. I had practiced it some, but now with 50 years of seasoning in that same practice, I kind of look at it differently. I've seen different results than what I thought I was going to get. In fact, one of John's most consistent phrases is, "You see me now where I'm at, what I've accomplished, the success that has come my way. But I wish you could see me where I started. Because you wouldn't be nearly as in awe of me as you are in this moment. See, it's easy for the success, the income, the best-selling status. I know people who are willing to put the money up front before anybody has ever seen a copy of their book. They'll put the money up front to make sure that it becomes a guaranteed bestseller. I recently heard of a would-be scandal of an organization that spent $91,000 buying at retail all the copies of the books of one of its founders. They didn't buy all those copies of those books for any other reason than to push the sales numbers up so that it would become a bestseller. Now, the average person doesn't spend $91,000 buying their own books to become a bestseller, but many have spent $5,000 to $10,000 before the book was even in print to pay an organization to get the guaranteed bestseller. Because in their mind, that little sticker on the outside cover, that imprint printed into the logo design or the cover design that says bestseller, it's a talisman. They think somehow that if I'm asked to speak somewhere, if they just see that bestseller sticker, of course I'm going to get booked. If I have the opportunity to do some training somewhere and they know I'm a best-selling author, obviously they're going to pick me over all these other people. I'm going to tell you the truth is probably not. It's nice to have. It's like having a participation trophy, to be perfectly honest with you. And I hate to say that, but unless it's a New York Times bestseller list or a Wall Street Journal's bestsellers list, the odds that people even see it with the same value to say best-selling author, it's there. That's awesome. I don't have one. Let me be honest. I've written 7 books. I've published 4 of those. None of them are bestsellers. Not one. But I have had people write books and endorse my book in their book. One of them, in fact, I still have it as a screenshot somewhere. When he posted his book on Facebook, my book was right next to it. Tattered, worn, grease-covered, pages hanging out the sides, the whole 9 yards. And he said, if it hadn't been for that book, I would have never written this book. In fact, if it hadn't been for that book, I may not even be here. Okay, I don't have a bestseller, but I'll take that as a win. That's not a talisman. That's an achievement. Maybe just one. But like the old joke with the kid and the starfish, walking along the beach, picking up the starfish, throwing them back into the ocean. The old man says, what are you doing? He said, I'm saving the starfish. He said, look at them. There's thousands of them. There's no chance you can save them all. He said, nope, you're right, I can't. And he threw the starfish into the ocean. He said, but I just saved that one, and you're in my way. Look, I'm not saying that these accomplishments, the certificates, the trainings, the diplomas, the plaques, the trophies, the medallions, the little medal that says I'm a founding member. I'm not saying those things don't mean anything. I'm not saying that we shouldn't strive to accomplish things, the milestones and the markers of success along the way that we can look back and go, I have a win, I have another win, I have another win, I have another one, because that's where our courage comes from sometimes, just to keep moving. John Maxwell recently said, I have eagle days and I have hippo days. Those eagle days, I'm soaring high, my confidence is strong, I know where I'm going, and everybody can see me for my level of success. And I have hippo days where I feel pitiful, and I feel sorrowful, and I feel sad, and I feel depressed, and I just want to go wallow in the mud and feel sorry for myself, and I have no confidence. And the real win is when we find more eagle days than hippo days. But to think that we'll never have a hippo day, well, that's ridiculous. Of course you will. Of course you will, because you're human. And if you don't, or you might be delusional. But if you're honest with yourself, there are those days that you look back and you go, I have to reassess, I have to self-evaluate, I have to ask, what could I have done better? And that's going to make all the difference in the world for you and the people you serve. But that accomplishment itself isn't a good luck charm. That accomplishment itself isn't something to be idolized or worshipped. That accomplishment is a stepping stone toward greater success. It's an opportunity for you to say to someone else, it can be done, and I can prove it because I just did it. It's not going to guarantee success will always come or the bad days won't. It's not going to mean that the rest of the world has to bow down because you have your lucky rabbit's foot or your degree or your trophy or your ribbon. It doesn't work like that. But it does mean you tried hard and you finished. Do that again. Whatever it is that you're striving for, whatever accomplishment you've already had under your belt, that's a good sign that you're capable and you're competent. Go get some more of them. Keep stacking them up. Not because having them makes you any better, but because getting them is the process which makes you better. Do more of that, and you'll have the opportunity to change people's lives. Don't count on just getting these things making your life successful. Count on the fact that the effort necessary, the process engaged in getting them, makes you a better you. And that will be the biggest win you could possibly imagine. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. I encourage you to go to storypoweracademy.com and check it out. Look at the different classes, the different levels, the different things that are available. You can take a lot of them a la carte. But spend some time there and see if that's the kind of thing that would change the way you communicate as a leader, as a pastor, as a counselor, as a political leader. And if that will help you, I'd love to have a conversation with you. Again, only 10 people in the Elite Speakers. You will have to apply for that. But if you're a candidate, I'd love to have that conversation with you. I'm J Loren Norris with Story Power Academy. I look forward to seeing you inside.